Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Julian.
I'm Emilio.
And I'm Madeline. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together, talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we would love to hear from you. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok for updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio we record at Sleepless Cinematic Pod.
In addition to these main episodes, we record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. And while we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, foregoing sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we continue our current cycle of movies that we're calling Holiday Suggestion/Gift Box, where each one of us elects a holiday-themed film for the group to discuss. As usual, at least one of us will be seeing this movie for the first time, and differing opinions may or may not be held among us.
And it's my turn.
Yes! Madeline, you're up.
Yes, so we have previously had Carol suggested by Julian and Home Alone suggested by Emilio, 2 very different films, and we are adding a third very different film from both of those, which is Tokyo Godfathers, directed by Satoshi Kon, his penultimate feature released in 2003. And I'm the only one who's seen this film prior to this week, so welcome.
Yeah, my first Satoshi Kon film, we'll get to this later, but my exposure to Japanese cinema is criminally low. So yeah, this was a giant spike in the outlet on the graph of animated Japanese films I've seen.
This is also kind of baptism by fire, I think.
Definitely, yeah, for sure. But no, I'm so glad you suggested it.
Yeah, and it was my first time seeing the film too. And we'll get into it in a little more detail shortly, but I have seen quite a lot of Japanese films, animated and live action, before this one. But admittedly, I have had a Satoshi Kon shaped gap in my watching experience that I have now filled by 1/4. There's only four feature films that he's directed, and I've watched one of them now.
Gotcha. Well, same here. I'm filling that gap 1/4 at a time.
Yeah. So I am thankful that you, Madeline, have suggested this film, and I finally get to close that gap little by little. As many people may find unsurprising, many of my prior viewing experiences with Japanese animated films have been the films of Hayao Miyazaki. Mm-hmm. And even after seeing just one Satoshi Kon film, I can already see that there's a lot of difference.
Yeah, they have very distinct styles. And obviously Miyazaki is kind of the main Studio Ghibli director. He's not the only Studio Ghibli director. Satoshi Kon, very much not Ghibli.
Yeah.
This
very
is what
different.
I hear. Yeah.
These are, all 4 of his films are very much directed at adults and have very adult themes. Whereas there are a handful of Miyazaki films that have adult themes and are directed more towards adults, but so many of them are very child-friendly as well, like Ponyo and Kiki's and Totoro, etc. And yeah, Satoshi Kon, he passes away pretty young. He's 46 when he dies. He dies in 2010. So he only has one film after this, which is Paprika. But we should say, before we get too far into it, this movie should not be confused with 3 Godfathers, which was actually a major inspiration for this film. The John Ford film, but starring John Wayne from the 1940s. So not to be confused with 3 Godfathers, although there are 3 Godfathers in this film.
Yes, that's true. This film, Tokyo Godfathers, should also not be confused with the film 3 Men and a Baby, which is the 1987 film starring Tom Selleck, Steve Guttenberg, and Ted Danson about 3 men and a baby. I mean, the title does say it all.
I love titles that just tell you exactly what you're going to get.
Yes. On our last episode, we did discuss the joy of a title like Home Alone.
Yeah, he was Home Alone.
And these guys are 3 men with a baby. Yes, hijinks do ensue. And like Tokyo Godfathers, maybe there's a ghostly vision in it.
Ooh.
Did you guys know about that?
In 3 Men and a Baby? I've never seen 3 Men and a Baby.
So there is lore about this movie. When you watch it, not to get too deep into this, but there is like a pan of some two characters walking through a room, and there is something behind a curtain that if you just are watching it kind of casually, looks really weird and creepy.
Very Wizard of Oz.
Yes, it is very Wizard of Oz.
But we're paying attention to the being behind the curtain.
Exactly, yes. It's almost as famous as the movie. If you go to the Wikipedia page, there's like a whole thing dedicated to the urban legend of there being a ghost captured in this film. And it's not true. But 3 Men and a Baby, not to be confused with Tokyo
This
Godfathers.
is the most I've ever been interested in seeing 3 Men and a Baby.
I will say it's not a bad movie. It is one of those like 80s comedic jaunts. And if you think about it from that perspective, it's kind of fun.
But yes, this film we're discussing tonight, Tokyo Godfathers, is also not to be confused with Tokyo Story, the 1953 Yasujiro Ozu film, which is often considered among his best and one of the greatest films ever made, frankly, about an aging couple visiting their grown children in Tokyo. I first heard about this movie in college film history class as, just as a great example of Japanese cinema, but also for its, among cinephiles, I think, very famous move of expanding the 180-degree rule of how you film conversations.
Yes.
Where it's, typically if you have two people talking, you keep shooting either side of them, but then, Tokyo Story has a conversation between three people, which is shown with equal focus.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, but Tokyo Story by Yasujiro Ozu is not the film we are discussing tonight.
Yeah.
That's true.
Also, not to be confused with Tokyo Ghoul, which is a manga series about an alternate Tokyo where humans coexist with ghouls. And yes, it's like the Night of the Living Dead style ghouls. They're basically zombies.
Aha.
So we didn't really get to that in the Night of the Living Dead episode. We found it very interesting that they were referring to these creatures as ghouls. Tokyo Ghoul does the same thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
A little bit of
Rhyme.
kismet there.
Yeah. No zombie style ghouls in Tokyo Godfather.
Yes, that's true. I would also say that Tokyo Godfathers is not to be confused with the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift.
That's true.
Right.
Which is the third installment of the ongoing Fast and the Furious franchise. I have not seen this movie, but one thing I'll say is it's the first to be directed by Justin Lin.
Oh, yeah.
Who is, I think, by now known as a shepherd of the franchise.
Yeah.
But I've also mentioned, maybe on this podcast before, that I'm a huge, huge fan of his first, very scrappy, really interesting first film, Better Luck Tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, yes. Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift, not to be confused with Tokyo Godfathers.
And to finish off this bit, it may be very, very obvious at this point, but Tokyo Godfathers is not to be confused with The Godfather.
Or The Godfather Part 2.
Or The
Part
Godfather
3.
Part 3. Yes.
Of
Which
there,
maybe
there
is
are three
maybe
Godfathers.
I was going to say.
Exactly.
Yeah. That may be the one to definitely not confuse it with.
It's one reason why I do want to bring up those movies as, only tangentially related as they are, was that, well, there's, another popular movie podcast out there, the Blank Check podcast that Madeline and I are fans of, where in their episode about this film that we're discussing tonight, Tokyo Godfathers, I think it was Griffin Newman, one of the co-hosts of that podcast, who compares Satoshi Kon's directorial career to the acting career of John Cazale.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, which
Cool.
I
Where
think
it's
is a
like
very
all killer, no filler.
There we go.
a very apt comparison. It was just their short filmographies are unimpeachable.
Yeah. And I just want to talk a little bit about why I wanted my relationship with this movie, having seen it before, and why I wanted to bring it to the podcast.
Yeah, please do.
And Satoshi Kon's last feature, Paprika, is one of Dougie's all-time favorite films. And we watched it fairly early on in our relationship, and then we saw it again last year when it was re-released in theaters, or I guess earlier this year, because we went and saw that rather than watching the Super Bowl. So
You weren't missing much.
yeah, exactly. Sorry, I'm not much of a Swiftie. So we saw that in theaters, I guess, in February. But that movie is incredibly surreal, and it's like a real attack on the senses. And I don't know that the first time I watched it, I totally got it, but it really clicked once I saw it in the theater. And it also helps that it has a really incredible soundtrack. Not the same composer as this film, but a composer named Susumu Hirasawa, who's a frequent collaborator of Satoshi Kon. But this movie came into my life last Christmas. Dougie and I were set to head down to visit our family families over the holidays when he came down with a terrible case of the flu.
Ooh, okay.
Like really, really bad. And he like could pretty much barely get out of bed. And this is like December 23rd. So we had to reschedule our flights, and I was very worried about him because he felt so sick. And I was also really beaten up because I don't know that I've mentioned, but I love Christmas. I really like just love this time of year.
Yeah, and what's not to love?
Yeah. I mean, I know Christmas and the holidays can be hard for a lot of people for various reasons, and I totally understand that, but I have like an unabashed love for Christmas.
Yeah. Maybe some of the people in this movie too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that I was really, really broken up about the fact that we were going to have to postpone going home because he was just too sick to travel. But luckily by Christmas Day, he was feeling well enough to get out of bed, and he came out to the living room and joined me watching this movie. And so it was just a movie that really hit me at like kind of a tough time emotionally in the middle of kind of a tough few days. And I feel like this was just kind of the salve that I needed. And I think because of that, it's my favorite of the Satoshi Kon films that I've seen. I have not seen Millennium Actress. Perfect Blue and Paprika are beautiful, incredible films. And I think if you talk to somebody that is a Satoshi Kon fan, I think their favorite will probably change based on like what day it is.
Yeah. It's my understanding too.
Yeah, and well, I think it's worth saying too is I think this is the first animated movie that we're discussing on the podcast.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we've made passing reference in some unlikely shared universes to animation before, but
that's true.
So here is a little bit about the plot of this movie. It's Christmas Eve in Tokyo, and we meet a ragtag trio of unhoused people that may seem like an unlikely grouping. Gen is more or less the stereotypical embodiment of an unhoused person, struggling with addiction to alcohol and gambling, having lived on the streets for longer than he can remember. 16-year-old Miyuki, on the other hand, has only lived on the streets for 6 months and claims she can return home whenever she wants. And finally, we have Hana, a transgender woman and former cabaret performer who deeply yearns for motherhood. And as her luck would have it, our trio happens across an abandoned baby that may just help her live out this lifelong dream. Gen and Miyuki beg Hana to take the baby, deemed Kyoko, to the police station, but Hana is having none of it. At first intent on raising Kyoko herself, Hana soon shifts to a new plan. Locate Kyoko's parents and make them answer for their actions. Throughout the journey across Tokyo, our trio continues to be thrown into unlikely and serendipitous situations, hopefully leading them towards Kyoko's family and potentially towards forming one of their own.
That checks out with what I saw. Yeah.
So I think I've gushed for a while about my love for this movie, but I understand that anime and that I think Satoshi Kon's works are perhaps an acquired taste for some. So my question, I know that you guys hadn't seen this movie before, so what are kind of your initial impressions? How did you feel about this film?
Yeah, I will say, and we'll get a little bit more into this later, but I am not an anime enthusiast, and that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate it. I grew up watching a lot of Sailor Moon with my sister and found that to be quite enjoyable. For whatever reason, and I can't really put my finger on why, it's just not like a genre or a classification of movie that I just go, let's do it. There are so many wonderful movies out there. It's a great big world of film, and I feel like I've just kind of always sidestepped anime. So what I'll say is I got around to seeing this movie a little less than 2 times all the way through. And the first time I saw it, it was a little bit of a blur. Not in a bad way, though. I did feel like I was picking up on quite a bit. But seeing it the second time was really important. I actually feel like if I didn't see it a second time, I would feel
little lost.
I would feel derelict in my duties of talking about it on a microphone. And I think some of that is to say that I think the movie is full of, as you were saying, these serendipitous things. There are things that characters say that feel very offhand, but actually have a lot of importance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think I was able to catch a little bit more of it the second time. And so I had a lot of fun with it, even though I felt myself at times challenged to bring my strongest cinephile mind to the experience.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because I think that like I was only able to get one viewing in. I felt it was quite a clear viewing. But yeah, even if you're coming into this movie, completely clear-headed for the first time, I still feel like it hits you with so much that it is a challenge to wrap your head around it, and just in a tight 92 minutes as well.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
Yeah,
I was
absolutely.
like, you're in and you're kind of out, and it's
I thought it was very well paced. I mean, I really enjoyed the movie a lot. And I think that, well, Madeline, you referred to Satoshi Kon as a bit of an acquired taste before. And I think that, given my cinephile repertoire, I think I don't have to acquire the taste for Satoshi Kon. I already love the movie. I know that I'll like his other works, but I sort of see what you mean in the sense that it's just like it really hits you with a very specific sensibility all the way through.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any like idle moments in the tight 92 minutes of Tokyo Godfathers. And I think that, with all of the coincidences, and even if there's no coincidence, it's just the cascade of events that happen. I mean, it is, even if it were a live action movie, I think that I would still have a similar feeling in that regard. But there's also, while watching it, and I've heard in some, the way that some people talk about Tokyo Godfathers, there's a little bit of a question of like, oh, could it have been made as a live action film? Because it is, because of its grounding in reality. But I think that, I never questioned the integrity of it being animated while watching it, because it really just, Satoshi Kon and everyone working with him on the film have such a vivacious way of expressing the content through animation that it's sort of like, who cares if it's live action or it's animated? It's beautiful no matter what.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I felt like pretty soon after starting the film, I was like, I get the conceit.
Yeah.
I get what's going on. It's an animated film with some more adult themes attached to it, and I didn't feel taken out of the movie in any way, shape, or form because it was animated.
Yeah.
We'll maybe get into some of the ways in which the style of animation took me a little bit to latch on fully to, but the whole conceit of animation versus live action was not an issue for me either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And I guess we should probably say more or less up top that there, as with much anime, you have the option of, watching it with the original Japanese. You have the option of watching it with an English dub. I know you guys both watch the original Japanese.
Yep.
I tried to get in like a second this week viewing where I watched the original Japanese as well. But my first rewatch this week, I listened to the new English dub, which came out just a couple of years ago. It came out in 2019.
Okay.
And the reason I was really curious about this is because Hana is actually voiced by a trans woman. Shakina Nafak does the 2019 dub, does Hana's voice. And I know that I listened to a little bit of an interview with her, and she speaks about how important it is that trans characters be played by and voiced by trans actors whenever possible. And that, that wasn't necessarily something that was originally intended, but I really loved her performance as Hana.
Man, I wish I'd listened to it now. Yeah.
So I highly recommend, and I have this now on DVD and Blu-ray. So if anybody, wants to give it another go and watch specifically for in the English dub, then I do highly recommend it. I think it's very nice.
Hit up Madeline for the Blu-ray and DVD. No.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, are you offering this to any potential listener?
I mean, sure. If you want to email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com, I will consider lending you the DVD.
We are big supporters and lovers of libraries.
Yes.
And I feel like this one, you can, if there's an interlibrary loan set up, I'm sure one of those libraries is going to have this.
I ordered this from Orbit DVD in Asheville, North Carolina.
Love me some Orbit.
I love Orbit.
I still need to order from there.
You absolutely do. I used to live in Asheville, so I used to go to Orbit in person. I don't know if they still do rentals, but at the time they still did rentals, which was very cool.
I think they still do.
That's awesome.
I was there this summer, and they still did.
That's amazing.
Sweet.
And I know, Emilio, you have family in Asheville, so I had recommended this place to you.
Absolutely, and I absolutely love it. And every time I go to Asheville, I make a stop at Orbit.
Yeah. They're great, and I still, whenever I need to buy a new DVD, I Orbit is the first place that I look.
Yeah, I need to get out there someday. Just to Asheville to begin with. Yep. Yeah, I get the vibe that Orbit to Asheville, it's kind of like you look at like Amoeba Records in California.
Totally.
It's like a similar vibe.
It kind of feels that way. Yeah. We should also just stop real quick and wish everybody in Asheville, hopefully everything is going okay for you guys. I know that a lot of the area around orbit was pretty heavily affected by
Yeah.
a lot of the storms. So we're hoping any listeners from the North Carolina, Asheville area, hope you guys are doing okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I know the people of Orbit posted that they themselves feel like they didn't really sustain a lot of damage, and luckily due to their e-commerce, they are gonna pull through this just fine. But they mentioned that a lot of their neighbors are still struggling a lot. So if you're able to help out in Nashville financially, then I'm sure the businesses there would really appreciate that.
Yep. Support those local businesses.
Yes.
Wonderful. Back to Tokyo Godfathers.
Yeah, absolutely.
More in particular. Like I said before, I watched a lot of Sailor Moon as a kid with my sister, and I really enjoyed that. But of the other anime entertainments that I could have seen in my life, the only other one that I've seen is Spirited Away. And that was an experience that I had well over 20 years ago. So I did see Tokyo Godfathers, as was mentioned before, with Japanese dialogue. It was not dubbed. And what I'll say is I found it to be a unique and kind of challenging viewing experience in some ways, just because my brain was being pulled in a bunch of directions. Like
Yeah.
I was trying to take in the animation style and appreciate what was a little bit deliberately unrealistic
Yeah.
about it, but also read the subtitles, which I don't have a problem with. I love reading subtitles, but I think there was something about taking both of those
Yeah.
stimuli in that I found it to be kind of hard and in some respects. And I'm going to chalk that up just to the fact that I don't watch a whole lot of anime. But I'm curious for you guys, like, do you guys find that you have to calibrate yourselves a little differently for anime versus other forms of animation?
I would say my immediate answer to that question is sort of, but not so much. Do I have to calibrate myself? I mean, yeah. I mean, I have had more experiences watching specifically Japanese animated films throughout my life. Although one caveat to that is that many of the Miyazaki films that I've seen, I saw when I was a lot younger. I saw, a good chunk of his filmography probably before I was even 13 years old. And in that time, I saw films like My Neighbor Totoro, Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Castle in the Sky. And then Ponyo was out around that time. I remember seeing that too. Princess Mononoke. So a lot.
You saw Princess Mononoke before you were 13.
Yeah, I feel like I was.
That's a heavy movie from my
It
understanding.
is a heavy movie, and that did register with me at the time.
And I mean, should say I love that film. It's
Yeah.
on my Letterboxd top 4. I would not have appreciated that film under the age of 13, I don't think.
Yeah, although I mean, to be
you
fair,
may have.
I think I appreciated it then, but I know that I would appreciate it a lot more now. And so the only Miyazaki film that I have seen in proper adulthood and been able to appreciate with a more fully formed cinephile mind is the most recent one, The Boy and the Heron.
Yeah.
So I think, and watching that, the experience of watching The Boy and the Heron last year when it was out in theaters, I mean, I was thinking about some of what you pointed out, Emilio, that you kind of have to like adjust your brain a little differently to take this in. It's not really about like evaluating the actors' performances in the same way. It's, not that the voice acting isn't an incredibly important part
Of course,
of these films, but you're measuring it all with kind of a different set of expectations.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that when it comes to like appreciating the style of animation of these films, I think that, well, of course, I've already mentioned that Hayao Miyazaki and Satoshi Kon, two very different filmmakers,
Yeah.
in spite of the salient similarities of their medium. But I think, when the experience of watching like a Miyazaki film, I think there's a YouTube channel called Every Frame a Painting. And I think
I
that's
love that.
That's
It's a good one.
very apt descriptor for
Yeah.
his or for Satoshi Kon's films. But I think that when you watch a Miyazaki film, there's I like to think about the experience like when you look at a Van Gogh painting, and it's kind of, if you stare at it long enough, it seems kind of like some of those swirls are actually moving, even though in reality they're not. It plays kind of an optical illusion on you. And in a Hayao Miyazaki film, I think there are a lot of images that have kind of that effect, only they are moving. But it's very similar to like that experience of looking at a Van Gogh painting where even if you just freeze it for that moment, it still feels like everything is vibrating.
Cool. I
Yeah.
totally hear you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Satoshi Kon, even having seen only this one film, I mean, I can already tell that's not really the vibe with
Yeah.
his style. That there were more moments I noticed in Tokyo Godfathers, and maybe this is true across his greater filmography, that there's more moments where things are still, and they really are still. Like the pauses, I think, are a little bit more carefully planned out in his films, even though, as we've said, Tokyo Godfathers has so much momentum. I just couldn't help but notice that when a character paused, it really did seem like things kind of froze for a moment, but not in a bad way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I that was something that really caught me too. I felt like it was very intentional when things in the frame would move and when they wouldn't.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
layered the animation so that
Yeah.
they could do the backdrop of Tokyo as one frame and then do a character in front to allow that person to move while the rest of the city is stagnant.
Right. But then also, like, I remember there's an early shot, I think, of Miyuki looking at people from
Yeah.
like above,
Yeah.
and it's like
And she
some
spits on
people
them.
moving aren't exactly, and some people are moving and some people aren't.
Yeah.
Watching it again, trying to balance everything, I was like, is it part of the look? Is it
Yeah.
is it there to pull my eye in a particular direction?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it all felt very intentional. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
seems like meant to draw focus.
Yeah. And I had to think too, since, we were talking a little bit about how the visuals of the city of Tokyo are portrayed in the film, of that shot that happens over the end credits where you
Yeah.
just kind of see the city dancing.
Bouncing
Yeah,
a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's very, I mean, it's literally animated. It's very cartoonish, but has kind of a flair to it. And yet there's something very poised and kind
Yeah.
of still about it too. Even as that movement happens, it feels like, I think it feels like it is not trying to be 3-dimensional. It's making the most of being 2-dimensional in that way.
Yeah, exactly. But back to your question, Emilio, I mean, when you had first mentioned earlier this week that there were parts of this viewing experience that you found challenging, I'll be honest, I instantly felt a little defensive of this film.
That's totally fine. You can definitely feel that way because I had thought in my mind, I'm like, do some homework, feel like you can speak to this film and the animation style with some level of authority. And I have abdicated all of that. I am coming in purely as a noob to this.
I appreciate that though. And I appreciate that you're willing to give this a shot when it is something that is so new to you. And I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a huge anime fan, but I do think I'm maybe the most anime literate of this particular bunch.
Yeah.
Probably so, yes.
Yeah, I think that's apt.
And my theory, although which may be broken down a little bit, but I wonder if this is partially generational. Because I'm right in the middle of your ages. And I think that when I was growing up, anime was starting to break out from being like a niche art form. You mentioned, Emilio, that we had Sailor Moon when you were growing up, and when I was growing up, we had Pokemon and Dragon Ball and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Naruto, to name a few. But the mid-90s bring us some really, like, several anime series that are known to be some of, like, the all-time best, namely Cowboy Bebop, which the Cowboy Bebop movie is written by the co-writer of this film. And then also Neon Genesis Evangelion is another. It's an anime series that they remade into films in the last, like, decade.
Because the animated series were so beloved.
They're so beloved,
Okay.
and they were the same director wanted to remake them slightly. So they're not exactly the same as the original series, but it's the same main director, and they were huge cultural phenomenons in
Wow,
Japan. And that original series comes out in the 90s, and Disney also begins releasing like the new English dubs of Studio Ghibli films. Like you were saying, Julian, you had mostly seen English dubs as a kid. It's because Disney is releasing them at this time.
Yeah.
And so you've got, people like Kirsten Dunst like doing these voices. And then Spirited Away comes out in 2001, right? And wins the Best Animated Feature Oscar. So I think that it's a big time for anime.
Sure.
In the 90s and then going into the 2000s.
One thing I'll say, just to piggyback off of that, Pokemon was enormous
Yeah.
when I was growing up. And I was the lone kid who was like, I don't need these cards. Like, I don't need the hologram Charizard or whatever.
Whereas I was still collecting these in college.
I'll say about Cowboy Bebop too. My sister was really into Cowboy Bebop.
Very cool.
And I listened to the soundtrack of Cowboy Bebop, which was
great
a
soundtrack.
banger. Really cool.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And had a lot of love for that, but never watched any of the episodes.
Yeah.
So I think it was just honestly something that, like, it was around. I remember when these things were getting big. I just think for whatever reason, I was not making time for it.
I'm born in 92, so I'm a child through a lot of this, and then by the time I get to middle school, I have a lot of friends who are very into anime or into Naruto or Inuyasha or any of these other things. So I think that it just continues on an upwards trajectory. I think Death Note comes out in 2006. That's another one that people kind of laud as one of the best anime series of all time. Really, really terrible Netflix live action adaptation of that one. It's starring Willem Dafoe and Nat Wolff, which I mean are both good actors, but like terrible film. Apologies to both of them. Very bad. Do not recommend.
And Netflix doesn't always have the best batting average for like original in-house produced content.
Yeah.
So I guess another L for them.
But my theory is that this only continues because I've heard that Gen Z is like very into anime.
Okay.
I don't know how much that's true. So Julian, now I want to ask you about your experience, not just as a consumer, but like people that you knew. Did you feel like anime was big when you were a kid?
Yes, though I think I've noticed it more since my college years, it being a really big thing among my generation. I think it's, ever since I've been of college age and beyond, though it probably honestly goes back to high school too. It's been kind of a trope in my life that I have had and still have a lot of friends who are deeply into anime, but I just keep not going down the rabbit hole because I kind of don't know where to begin.
Yeah, that's a big one for me too.
I'm thinking mostly of TV here. I've had many different anime series recommended to me, but I mean, not just because of the initial wave of watching Miyazaki films in my childhood, but I feel like I am a little bit better, or more than a little bit, I'm better at logging long lists of movies that I've watched than TV series, because if I'm going to get into a TV series, I mean, I want to watch it with the same devotion as I watch a film, but they're so much longer.
Right.
And so like, I want to know that I can be in it for the long haul. And I mean, if that means getting into One Piece, which I think is the longest running television series of all time, well, that's going to be several years and maybe at least.
Like Doctor Who or something.
Right.
One Piece, according to Google, currently has 1,122 episodes.
Yeah. Good God. Okay.
Yeah. But also I think that like a important factor for my generation too is that like, well, when I was watching all those Miyazaki films as a kid, I mean, those were things that my parents wanted to see too, so they were encouraged. And that also was still in a time, as young as I am, that was still a time when streaming wasn't really a thing yet. So, there wasn't really this sense that you could just like open the computer and watch whatever you want just yet. And I think that
you had to wait for the DVD and the Netflix mail.
Exactly. You had to do that, which is exactly what my family did.
Did you grow up like going to a video store ever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
There was one like around the corner from my childhood home that I remember. I think it closed probably in like around like 2009 or 10, somewhere around there. But yeah, no, I have some vivid memories of that place.
Cool.
Shout out to video stores.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
That hardens me just a little bit.
Yeah, but so then I think by the time that like, I felt like I had autonomy in selecting streaming, it's anime hadn't really been a big part of my life in several years. So that was when this feeling of not knowing where to begin came back in. All I know is that, I mean, people just tell me to check out Crunchyroll.
All of this is to say that I don't think I have to calibrate differently for anime more than I need to temporarily calibrate for any foreign language film.
Right.
I think it takes my brain about the same amount of time. And I think it's because I've just had a lot more exposure to it.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. One of the things that really struck me early on is that there is this sort of lack of realism that's very deliberate. Mm-hmm. There is an exaggeration to a lot of the facial expressions. Obviously, there's a very specific reason, I think, why. We talked in a couple episodes back, I think, about the concept of there being a greater truth when you're able to distort reality. Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of anime is kind of playing with.
Yeah.
That I think is really cool. But yeah, I think it's... you mentioned the term acquired taste before, and I do think that there is like an acquired comfort level, I think. And I also would say too, I think that there's something about the themes, if we want to kind of bring it back to the kind of story and what's going on in this film, that made me want to kind of look for performance, like look for something in people's faces, look for things that I wasn't really necessarily going to get the way I was expecting from a perspective of like seeing somebody in real life or an animation style that was going for more kind of naturalism, you know?
Yeah. As you're saying, the animation in this film is not trying to be realistic or always look the same. The characters distort, they change, they stretch and contort. One of the animators that they really trace this back to is a key animator on the film named Shinji Otsuka. And he apparently is really the leading force behind this kind of contortion that you see in a lot of these character faces that I think adds to a lot of the expressiveness, which is difficult in animation. You know, you look at movies that like other animated movies that were coming out like kind of around this time in the late 90s, early 2000s. And there are like, you know, Pixar, this is a big time for Pixar in this particular era. But you look like at like earlier Pixar, if you watch Toy Story now, like Toy Story is a great movie, but there's something very eerie and like uncanny valley about the computer animation. The humans, but I'd say also the toy.
Okay.
To a certain extent. Definitely the humans.
I would say the humans for sure.
The humans first and foremost.
But Andy does not look anything like an actual child in that film.
Whereas this film is hand drawn with like there are computers involved
digital
in this
elements to the animation,
when it comes to the layering, like my understanding is that each of the layers is hand drawn, but then they use like the computer animation to actually layer it and kind of add that movement that we were talking about. It's my very basic understanding.
No, that's
I'm
awesome.
not an animator.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up, though, because that's another thing that I consider when I think about the distinction of some Japanese styles of animation as opposed to what you might get in American animated films or those of other countries. Is that, like, I mean, you know, I think even if there's a limit to the amount of animated films from Japan that I've seen, I mean, there's a lot of animated films I've seen just in general. And I think in the last few years of my life that, I mean, the crown might be had by either digital things like Pixar movies or stop motion films. And I enjoy stop motion a lot. Most recent,
I love stop motion too.
Most recent new to me a stop motion film that I finally saw was Coraline, and I ate it right up.
Did you guys see Pinocchio? The
Guillermo del Toro.
Yes.
I did. Yes,
really like that too.
Me too. Yeah. Both great movies. But yeah, I think that, you know, in certain Western styles of animation, I think that they've kind of, this is not necessarily a knock at those styles, but they've kind of lost the hand-drawn element, which I think is very much retained. Even if you're talking about films, you know, like Tokyo Godfathers is 21 years old as of this recording. Even if you're talking about films of a past time, I think these films of Satoshi Kon or Hayao Miyazaki and other Japanese animators, they still loom very large in our present culture. And I think, you know, the hand-drawn element, to me, I think is a big, well, pun absolutely intended, draw of these films, because I think that there's just a greater sense, even if what we're seeing is a heightened sense of emotion and whatnot, there's just something that feels a little bit more, to use an overused word, authentic
or real, or like you see the seams a little bit. I mean, I love in movies when you see the seams. I love that stuff. So
and so there's less of this feeling, like even for all of the stretches of reality that happen in a film like Tokyo Godfathers, I never once thought uncanny valley while I was watching it. There's not that same feeling that you get when you look at early 3D animation or something like it. Well, speaking of stretches of reality that exist in this film, I think we made a passing reference to it already, but I was really struck by the presence that coincidence has in the plot and themes of Tokyo Godfathers. But what do we make of the abundance of coincidences throughout the film? Is there some kind of message? Because this is a movie that takes place at Christmas time. Is there some kind of message about faith and hope here? Or is it, you know, some kind of Is there some kind of meta element of, manipulating the capabilities that animation allows in using all these coincidences, or is it something else? Like, what do you both think on that?
I think Hana would say that it's a matter of faith, because I think that she seems to have a lot of faith, and she believes that Kyoko is a gift from God, and she believes that Kyoko is unbelievably lucky, and that everything good that's happening to them, it all goes back to her. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I don't think that's all it is.
Yeah.
But I think that's what Hana would say.
I would agree with the point that you just made, Madeline. I was really struck by the way that this movie felt both sentimental, but also kind of just like, yeah, it is what it is. We don't really sit on very typically sentimental moments in this movie for very long. And I think,
it's true, yeah.
And I think that is part of the world that you're in. Something happens, and before characters have enough time to really reflect on it or make a judgment call on how they really feel, and therefore maybe help you, the audience, also come to your own conclusions, we're off to something else.
And I mean, I think part of that is that's how these characters kind of that's reflected, I think, in their own lives. In that, like, they've all kind of exiled themselves for different reasons. Right. And it seemed like maybe all three of them, but at the very least Hana, like, kind of made a snap judgment and left their family before they actually had all the information.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that's actually one of the things that's very touching about this movie is, as the film goes on, a huge reason why a lot of these characters are unhoused in this film is sort of in many ways self-imposed. It's like it's by their own doing, and not necessarily that
they did something bad and like they're being punished kind of way.
Right. That they would be, banished by society, but that they kind of took it upon themselves to go that extra step.
Yeah, Miyuki very directly, she says up top that, like, she could go home whenever she wanted.
Right. Whereas I think Gin says right after, he's like, well, the ones that say that are the ones that really can't, or whatever. I guess more specifically to your question, I think the movie is trying to put you in a place where you're meant to take the coincidences as part of this almost wacky, but also really kind of sweet. We used the word sweet before. I think this movie is mostly very sweet. It's a
very sweet movie.
That it's part of the wacky, sweet story that comes out of this. I think coincidence is very much a huge component to it. I think we're meant to see things as coincidence for sure. I would say, though, I don't think that it's necessarily meant to be also a reflection of the animation. Like, I do think that this is a movie, I think it would look very different, but I could see a world where this movie is live action. Like, one movie that Tokyo Godfathers reminded me of in a lot of ways was Raising Arizona.
Yeah, sure.
That it's also it's like a kind of a madcap movie.
That's a good comparison.
With a bunch of, like, characters that are kind of on the fringe of society that acquire a baby and then it sort of changes everybody around them and clarifies a lot of things. And then that movie is famously sort of like it has very cartoonish elements as well.
Right.
But I do think that this is a story that could be told either way.
Yeah. I definitely I see how this could be made as live action. I do agree with that to an extent, but I think that this medium has a lot of benefits that allow this film to make very specific choices. Like, one thing I was thinking about is that I think that the anime allows this balance between, like, empathy, but also, like, a necessary distance. Because I worry that with live action, we as viewers would be faced with too much of the reality of, like, a situation in which people are unhoused.
Or that, like, there's a discarded baby somewhere.
Exactly. And I think that these topics go down a little bit easier in animation because like, Kon very intentionally, like, created these characters and put them in this situation, but that's not necessarily the main thing the film is about.
Right. That's true.
And so I think if you put it in live action, then you kind of have to reckon with these circumstances in a way that you don't have to the same extent.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I like how you put that.
Anime.
It does put a little bit of distance between some of the realities of what are happening and
It's like you don't feel it as viscerally.
Right.
And
right.
I think this is a feature, not a bug. Like, I think
Right.
that this is a good thing.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
It sort of allows you to get to the heart of what's happening with the characters faster.
Yeah.
And I think there are a couple of moments throughout the film where, like, yeah, as we've said, like a lot of it could translate in theory to live action, but there's a couple of moments where it just feels like, this is like they really are taking advantage of the freedom of animation here. And there was one moment in the Blank Check episode about Tokyo Godfathers where they single out right towards the end of the movie that that wind that picks up Hana when she is carrying Kyoko, and that saves them from certain death.
You're right. Like that, it would be really weird to depict that
Yeah.
in any other way but animation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if you were trying to do that with live action, there could be some very stilted digital effect
Right.
that accomplishes that. Also, just fun little anecdote. I mean, this film is by Satoshi Kon, and then Raising Arizona is by the brothers Coen.
Oh, yeah.
Don't think that didn't cross my mind too. I love that.
Great minds think alike.
Yes.
What you both are getting at was a very conscious intention of Satoshi Kon. I mean,
We're
A+.
going there, man.
yeah. I mean, even just in the Wikipedia entry about the movie, there's a little bit about the motif of coincidences in the film, and that what Satoshi Kon wrote himself is that this film is an attempt to restore in a healthy way the miracles and coincidences that have been pushed into the other world by the weapons of scientific logic. Which I could totally see that while watching the film, that there is like kind of a romanticism and optimism about it too, a cognizance that there is this gritty, cruel world that the characters exist in that is based on our own reality, but that animation and film in general can be a tool of redemption.
Yeah.
And that Satoshi Kon is very consciously using it in this direction. And another filmmaker that reminds me a lot of, who has very transparently tried to reconcile these same sort of feelings in his own films is David Lynch.
Yeah.
And there was one particular David Lynch film that I thought of quite a bit while watching Tokyo Godfathers, which is a film I mentioned just 2 episodes ago, which is Wild at Heart.
Another movie that I bought on DVD from Orbit DVD in Asheville, North Carolina.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, Wild at Heart, I don't think I've seen.
Oh, okay.
No,
But so-
no. I've seen some of his other stuff, but that one, it's kind of hard to find, I think.
It is,
Oh,
yeah.
I
It's
have it on
weirdly hard to.
DVD.
There we go.
Yeah, great.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you're going to be that friend now, the person that people borrow
I
the
don't have
Wild.
that many movies. I just have the weird ones.
That's a good archive to have.
I actually really like that in general. I don't have a lot. I just have the weird ones.
Yeah. There was one moment in Tokyo Godfathers that I thought might have been a specific reference to Wild at Heart, which is the moment when Gin is he's almost passed out in an alleyway and then sees this image of basically an angel coming to rescue him.
Yeah.
And then she is asking, "What do you want? My magic powers or an ambulance?" And he says, "An ambulance." And she's like, what?
She's very upset.
Yeah, she's very upset.
Like, how dare you?
But there's a scene in Wild at Heart where the Nicolas Cage character, whose name, funny enough, is Sailor, to make another anime reference, he is like nearly passed out on the ground too, and gets a vision of Glinda the Good Witch from The Wizard of Oz in a very, very similar fashion. Basically, coming there to rescue him and to tell him, like, you still have a chance.
Yes.
I also really like, isn't there that scene where an ambulance goes through a storefront?
Yeah.
And the guy stumbles out and he's like, call an
Call an
ambulance.
ambulance.
Yeah.
Rather like that. That was good.
That's another like one of these kind of coincidences that we're talking about, is that it just barely
misses
them.
Yeah.
And that's, I want to use that to lead into what I want to say about your question, Julian, because something that's very important is that the city is looking out for them. Tokyo is a character in this film, and much more literally than when we say like New York's a character in this film. Like, Tokyo is, I think, like a conscious, literal character in this film, because they are nearly mowed down by cars multiple times. They're led like to just the right place for the next step of their journey. every single time. And Hana and Kyoko's lives are literally saved at the end by a miraculous gust of wind.
Right.
And this isn't necessarily coincidence, although there are a lot of coincidences in this film. I think it's because the city of Tokyo is guiding them.
Right.
And it's protecting them.
Even in the pictures, right?
Yeah.
When the towers that they're trying to sort of align
Yeah.
to figure out like where they're at.
Yeah. And you also, there are certain points where you can actually see faces that are like created using the scenery, like using buildings that it'll sort of be a line that like 2 air conditioners are the windows and like a row of, some trash cans or whatever is like a mouth. Like you can catch that in a lot of different points of this film.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would need a second viewing to notice all the different moments, but the one moment when I kind of caught that was in the scene when the main group of characters have made their way based on a Polaroid picture to what they believe to be the house of Kyoko's parents, and they come there and they find out it's ruined and basically demolished.
Torn down,
Yeah, that was one moment where I could see like the facial aspect of the building.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that too while watching, even before I did any supplementary reading or research, just to understand Satoshi Kon's intentions in the film. I did kind of get that feeling that there's like, the city is an active participant in this story too, and that like. That made me think a little bit about like more about this choice to animate it as opposed to show it in live action, because like other people who have seen the greater Satoshi Kon filmography can attest that like this is more grounded in reality than any of his other films.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so that but still it's animated, and I think that like that that's another opportunity that's afforded by this medium.
Right. And I guess I said, 20 minutes ago or so that, this movie could be told, right? But I guess that the aspect of the city itself being so vibrant, the city itself sort of taking these forms to feel a little bit more like something that is almost parting seas and, like the gust of wind kind of pulling them in one direction or another. I think those are things that are rendered in a much more malleable way with animation.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I mean, Miyuki and Gin and Hana all have kind of different relationships with their families and with parenthood in general. Hana obviously is really motivated to be a mother. When they find Kyoko, she's the one to name her. She's the one that's trying to convince these others, like, can we keep her just for tonight? We can't ruin Christmas.
Right.
If we return her to the police today, then Christmas is always going to be the day she was abandoned.
Yeah.
And we can't do that to her. Like Hana has so much empathy for the child, but also she's like really using this as a moment to live out this like lifelong dream and fantasy.
Yeah.
But I think that all 3 of them have like interesting relationships that kind of color their motivations in this film. So how do you guys think each of these characters' past influence their motivations to find Kyoko's parents?
One thing that jumped out to me was that Gin presents a lie.
Yeah.
Earlier in the film, right?
Yeah.
He says, he was an athlete who I guess took a dive basically. And as a result, he was banned from the sport. And when we find out that it is actually a much more pedestrian type thing, he got through gambling or like I kind of lost his money and over his head. And as a result, things got very difficult for him, from that point. But one of the things, I mean, his character was really interesting for me too, because there is an aspect of him lying to himself and not just others that I think is really strong. And I think that his character's journey is about facing his own truth.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting choice from the film to lie to us about Gen's backstory.
Right, yeah.
And then we don't know it's a lie until Hana finds out it's a lie. We find out at the same time when we actually, I mean, there are like, as Hana's picking up occasionally when Gen will say something about like, oh, I could have reunited with my wife and daughter.
Yeah,
and
she's
Hana's like, I thought they were dead.
I thought they were dead, yeah.
But it's through these same moments that we also see the holes in his story.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when Hana at the end, when they actually meet Gen's daughter, who is a nurse at the hospital that they take Hana to after the ambulance nearly hits them.
Correct. Yeah.
And she collapses. This other Kyoko, Gen's daughter Kyoko, is a nurse there. And when Hana sees that she's alive, like she blows up at Gen, and it's like, you lied to us.
Right. There's no part of her that's experiencing joy.
Yeah, and like you just wanted to create a sob story for yourself. Like you just wanted sympathy.
Yeah.
Right.
And I noticed with Gin too that I've read that there is, throughout other Satoshi Kon films, there's a lot of commentary on like intertextual things about the just film as a medium, and that like with Gin there's this motif of him wanting to be an action star.
Yeah.
Right. They do mention that a couple times.
And it's I liked that, it was amusing, but I thought it was interesting that the lie about his life turns out, like when you find out the truth, it turns out to be like things are a little more okay than you would expect. Yeah. And I feel like that's an interesting flip on that kind of story. I feel like it's usually presented in the opposite way, where like a character who's not revealing that much about their past is kind of saying things are okay, but it turns out that like that person that they could go back to is dead or something like that.
Yeah, whereas for all three of these characters, they have told themselves and told the others one story, but it actually seems like for all of them, they've made it worse.
Yeah.
By the story that they tell themselves.
Right. That there's some moment where it was very possible for them to make the kinds of amends that would have kept them from being out on the streets.
I just want to mention Gen is also the most competent around Kyoko, because he is the only one to have raised a baby.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, one of the things that is immediately very endearing about him.
Yeah.
Is he's like, there's some realities here. I get it, Hana. You want to be you want to be a mom.
But like I know how to sanitize the bottle and like test the milk.
The milk and you know what? Hey, this time it's the diaper or whatever. Yeah. They're very real life things that he has a little bit of a faster handle on. But yeah, that is one aspect of the lie that he tells. I mean, doesn't he say that his daughter died very young?
Yeah, and it's really, I think, when Hana sees how much knowledge he has, that's when she even finds out that he ever had a daughter.
Right.
So to your point, he couldn't lie about that, because why does he know all of this if he didn't raise a child?
Right. Totally.
But he could not completely erase his daughter's existence.
Right.
Yeah. But then to shift gears over to Miyuki, I think that, it's a little different with her in that you get the sense it's not like she's completely lying about the situation that's gotten her where she is now, but there's an important detail that you don't learn at first, which is this impulsive attack that she's committed against her father by stabbing him.
I did not get that the first time I saw this. And I also did not make the connection of the person in the train and the person at the end of the film. That was like, I knew that it happened, but when the train thing happened, I was like,
"You're like, what? She freaked me out
I don't know
about.
What's going on right now."
Yeah.
And it was I needed to see it a second time to get that.
Yeah, and that scene is it's one of the earlier coincidences of the movie but that felt a little more like something where it felt less like the limits of reality were being stretched, and that felt like a coincidence that I could see in a lot more other movies too.
Sure.
But yeah, and so then like I think you get the sense early on that Miyuki is kind of just like this disgruntled teenager who wanted to run away from home. But you find out it's a lot more complicated than that. And I think on some level, we don't totally get to the bottom of just everything that's going on in Miyuki's psyche. Not in a bad way. It's just, there's still a little bit of mystery left with that character. Like, how did it get so bad between her and the father?
Yeah, I think she says a few times that she felt very invisible. That her mother is extremely religious.
That's true.
And I think she felt this betrayal from her father because she thought that her father had gotten rid of her cat.
Right.
Mm-hmm. The animus that she has towards her father, I mean, it
generates, just built up over 16 years.
Yeah, it sounds like very relatable for a 16-year-old girl. It's another moment where I feel like the the fact of the film being animated kind of allows that to land a little better.
Absolutely. That's one of those that one of those scenes I think would be particularly difficult in live action. Even just the fact that when we see it happen, it's kind of a dream sequence.
Yeah.
Right.
And she looks very different. I think the implication is that she's lost a lot of weight since she's been on the streets.
Yeah.
I think that was part of it too for me. Is
Yeah.
I was
point.
like, what am I seeing here? Because eventually, and I kind of like this touch, that her dad is replaced by Gin.
Yeah, and then her mother is replaced by Hana.
By Hana, exactly. And so there's this sort of
And
weird...
the cat's replaced by the baby.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Right. I like the way that scene comes out of dream into reality. I thought it was really kind of clever.
Yeah.
But it also was one of those moments where I'm like, is this a new character that's being introduced?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, with Gin kind of presenting as her father in this dream sequence, they have this interesting relationship where somebody else on the street says to her, like, oh, you're Gin's girl. Like,
right, you run with him.
Yeah, you run with him. You're like his spoiled princess. And I think it's going back a little bit to Gin is I think it's so interesting because Miyuki is like the daughter stand-in for him from when the time of his daughter's life that he never knew.
Right.
Like he never knew his daughter past childhood. He didn't know her as a teenager. So Miyuki is a stand-in for that. Whereas Kyoko is a stand-in for his daughter at the time he did know her.
Right. When he was able to be
an active,
unencumbered by his life's decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it sort of feels like, because Miyuki is in this position that she's in, that like there's still some impulsiveness in how she takes care of Kyoko too.
Yeah.
That, I mean, she's not she's the least senior member of this main trio.
Yeah.
And that to some extent she is at their whims.
Right. She's kind of just like holding it. She's like,
Yeah.
you're good, right?
She changes
can
a
take
diaper
it. Yeah.
once.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah. But, it's I guess, for lack of a better term, you could sort of call her a sidekick at a lot of times. But I mean, sidekicks, I think as much as there's been a lot of like praise for them in general pop culture, I think sidekick is still like an underrating title for a lot of those characters.
Yeah.
Like if you look at, like Samwise in Lord of the Rings, like, he's so important. He's so
Oh
crucial.
my God. Right. He's the conscience of that pair.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And so, like people like, Samwise in Lord of the Rings, and there's many other great examples, but I feel like the characters like this are in many ways the sustenance of the stories that they're a part of.
Right. I mean, I feel like I hear this term thrown around a lot when people talk sports. The Batman and Robin, like 1A, 1B, in terms of like star players, how important it is to have that other person to play off of, the other one that takes some of the pressure off of, maybe the 1A. And one of the cool things about this movie is that I think the three of them are so well developed. Like one of the things that I thought was so interesting, and it kind of took me by surprise, was how Miyuki, while holding the baby, is taken hostage.
Yeah.
Right at this wedding, that when they're at the cemetery, they help out this Yakuza boss who accidentally is almost being crushed by his own car. Right. And this guy in a rather like friendly gesture is like, here, come to my daughter's wedding.
Yeah. And they're like, we're looking for this club. And he's like, oh, weird. The owner of that club's marrying my daughter. Come on over to the
come
wedding.
on over. And because they're pretty unsavory characters, somebody shows up to try to kill him. Right. And that person takes Miyuki and the baby hostage.
Yeah.
But he actually takes her to this like refuge.
Yeah.
Am I understanding that correctly?
Absolutely.
It was like,
I think he grabs a hostage, I think out of panic. Like,
Right.
because he tries to shoot the Yakuza boss, but the groom throws himself in front, and I think the guy's kind of like, shit, I missed.
Yes, right.
I have to get out of here and they're going to come after me. So I'm going to take this hostage. And I think he just kind of grabs somebody.
Right.
And then he's like, oh no.
Yeah.
What have I done? I have a teenager and a baby.
Right.
And I don't know exactly what he was saying. I only caught like words here and there, but you speak Spanish. So
Yes.
I assume you caught a little bit more.
I will say that was kind of fun. If I remember correctly, it was something like, you need to come with me or something like that. It was something along those lines. Can you understand me? I think was another one too.
Yeah, she was basically like, no, I cannot.
Yeah.
That scene, and then the scene he takes her to, I believe that's supposed to be his wife.
Oh, his wife.
Yeah.
Okay.
And their baby.
Right. Yeah.
It's like they have a young child who's still breastfeeding.
Right, yeah.
So he's like, oh, you have a baby. I can help feed your baby because my wife is going to be willing to breastfeed this baby.
Right. But it's just like, it's such a shift because, this person is sort of shown to be this assassin
Yeah.
or like kind of
Yeah.
cold-blooded operative of some kind, but then it's just like,
The empathy just like kicks
in right away. And I do think that that's something that is really sweet also about this film.
Absolutely.
And is very true to life. And this will go back a little bit to your question, is this idea of like their relationship with their families and parenthood when they're shown an innocent life.
Yeah.
How quickly people are just like,
Not my problem.
we need to protect
or
this.
we need to protect it.
We need to
Yeah.
protect this. My problems, it's cool. We'll figure that out
Yeah.
later. What does this infant need?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I really love we started to get into this. I love the scene where Miyuki is there with I think this person's wife.
Yeah.
Because they don't speak the same language. Miyuki speaks only Japanese. The
Yeah.
wife speaks only Spanish.
Yeah.
They each know a couple of English words. And so you have like 3 different languages going. And even though they really can't understand each other, they can't converse, they still communicate.
Right. And I think that's the first scene where Miyuki's character like really divulges something.
Yeah,
right?
she's like opening up. We
Yeah.
learn more about Miyuki in this scene than we do, I think, at any other
in any
point
other
in the
moment.
film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then like
good stuff. Yeah.
towards the end, I mean, you do get the sense that like one of the feelings that persists for Miyuki is guilt about what she
Yeah.
did to her father, and that she
She
wants.
really breaks down in this scene in particular.
yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
and that she like wants some kind of redemption for that, and it's. I mean, she does at least get that last meeting with her father at the very end of the movie when Kyoko is finally returned to her biological parents, and then Miyuki's father is one of the people leading them into the hospital room. Although, I mean, I still kind of wonder, after the credits roll, if this is the kind of relationship where, like, given the designs of this movie, it could be that all is repaired from that moment onward, or they at least are given the space to go through the work they have to do
Yeah.
with each other. But maybe not, too. I
Well,
feel
we
like,
know that
yeah.
he's open to receiving her back because
That
she.
phone call, right?
Well, the phone call is part of it. She also finds a newspaper clipping that says, I think she finds it in the like ruined house. She finds a newspaper clipping that's like an
Right.
Yeah.
ad that he put in the paper to communicate with her, to tell her that the
Right.
cat came back.
Mhm.
I think that's a very clear intention on his part to say like, you can come home.
Yeah. Please,
Yeah.
we want you. Yeah.
Yeah, and even just that first look of recognition from the opposite train cars.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a sense that if one were dead to the other, I think that interaction probably wouldn't even have happened.
Yeah. This movie is so much about fathers and daughters.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Every relationship, every core relationship that happens is father and daughter.
Yeah, there's no sons in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Although, but it's worth noting too that, like, and it was absolutely an intention of Satoshi Kon in making the film that it's really about chosen family. The idea
Yeah.
that you can have like a family unit that exists outside of biological bonds.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, Hana's a really good example of
Exactly.
this because Hana grew up in the foster system
Right.
and never knew her biological parents.
Yeah.
And when she goes to the club where she used to work and she reunites with the woman who we think is the owner,
Mhm.
and she calls her mother. And the subtitles at first put mother in quotation marks.
Mhm.
And then I think they go away every subsequent time that she says mother. But I think that's really sweet and really intentional that before Gen and Miyuki were Hana's chosen family, like the people at this club were Hana's chosen family.
Yeah.
Mhm.
A lot of these characters experience some form of redemption.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just a huge theme that's running through the movie. I was curious for you guys. I mean, I'll get more into this later. I mean, I was really drawn by Hana's story, but whose arc in it did you feel most resonant for you and why?
I think immediately while watching, my answer would also have been Hana.
Yeah.
Just because there is, if you just put it in like a simple framework that Hana wants to rescue this baby and fulfill her own dream of being motherly in the process. And even though she accepts that she can't, be the ongoing caretaker of this child, she can at least rescue her and bring her back to safety, which she does. And that, in that final sequence where everyone is dangling off the building and that gust of wind saves Hana and Kyoko. I mean, it's Hana who's
It's her-
holding.
She's the one
Yeah.
who, yeah.
Yeah. And even if a coincidence drives it, it still puts her in that situation. But even along the way too, I feel like like her conscious desires are a huge driver of the movie. Like if you take the coincidences, not that you can take them out of it, but if you consider the machinations of the plot beyond just all these coincidences, I think that she like really pushes the plot forward in a lot of ways.
Definitely. My first thought is also Hana, but then when I tried to reflect on that and dig into that a little bit, and one thing that I'll say is that Hana, I think, did the least bad thing. Like when it comes to what these three people exiled themselves for.
Yeah.
Hana like socked a heckler that I think had it coming.
Yeah, was being kind of a douche.
And then I think exiled herself more to protect the club. And also I think from embarrassment and afraid that they would be upset at her, but knowing that if she stuck around, it would probably cause trouble for the club.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas like Miyuki stabbed somebody and Gen like was in a lot of debt.
Right.
So it's interesting that we're all like, oh yeah, we're kind of, it seems like maybe we're in agreement that Hana does have this like very resonating redemption arc.
We haven't stabbed anybody, have you?
No.
And we're not in deep debt with loan sharks of any kind.
Nope.
So that's probably
Maybe
why.
that's why. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. That I do think that maybe Hana's the incident. I think that maybe put Hana on the street. Maybe isn't the most
egregious
infraction. We'll say yes.
Yeah.
But I think hers is the first one that really hooked me.
Yeah.
She's the one who has the most empathetic response
Yeah.
right away. And I also just feel like in my own life, my wife and I, like, we have a lot of friends who, cannot biologically have kids of their own, but who are incredible parents and have made I don't want to say difficult choice, but like a choice that is like requires a lot of commitment to become parents. And I think that was sort of catnip for my own sensibilities. Just the idea that like, this is somebody who can't physically have their own kids, but
still is drawn to that.
But still is so drawn to that.
Still is nurturing.
It still is very nurturing. And also I think some of it is part of, her own wounding, right?
Yeah.
And her being through the foster care system, that she's like sort of trying to create a life that is better than her own. And I do think that there's something really beautiful about that. And so that really hooked me right away.
Absolutely. And as we've been talking about this, I keep thinking that like of the three characters, when you look at how they come into the story, I think that like Hana has committed like as you put it, Madeline, the least bad infraction of the three. And I think, she also has probably struggled from the earliest age and most consistently throughout her life.
Yeah.
But on some level, I think that it makes sense for her to be the one who would be predisposed to have the most faith and the most hope for the future because, she's evidently had redemptions before that she goes from being in the foster care system to having this past chosen family of fellow cabaret performers.
Right.
And even if she has had to leave that group over time for a reason that she didn't deserve to leave for. I think she still, has the sense that like you can be picked up or you can rise up from these really trying circumstances. And so that gives her tenacity to save this baby and to really be like the driver of the plot that she is.
I want to think a little bit about the other two and their redemption arcs, because the thing that I find really beautiful is that each of their redemptions requires someone to forgive them.
Yeah.
In a way that Hana's really doesn't, because we don't care about the guy that she punched. He's not important, and it seems like the owner of the club is not upset and is just happy to have her back.
Right.
But Miyuki needs to be forgiven by her father, who she again stabbed.
Let's not forget that.
It's important.
It's pretty rough.
And Gen needs to be forgiven by his daughter. We don't meet his ex-wife, but needs to be forgiven by them, and he abandoned them.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. In some ways, it makes their arcs longer.
Yeah.
Right? Like theirs are the ones that take you through the full running time of the film.
Yeah, and they're not really fully completed.
Right,
like
that's true.
The last frame before the credits, is Miyuki's father.
Right.
Them finally reuniting in a way where she can't run away.
Yeah.
And probably at this point doesn't want to. Like I think she's ready at this point.
Right.
Yeah. And when you think about like how these characters get to these places of redemption and all the coincidences of the film, I mean, I think that an important detail to consider, like when all these coincidences come into play, is that they bring these situations into being, but they don't do the work for the characters in terms of unpacking whatever is guiding them. So, I mean, like a coincidence brings Gin and his daughter Kyoko back together, but that's not doing the talking for them. It's not doing the reconciliation for them.
Right. There's more that has to happen.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, that's an interesting thing about these coincidences too, that I think, just because they are, they may be arguably convenient doesn't mean that they are just like these kind of catch-all solutions. They're just more of a means to an end. Or to numerous ends.
Sure.
Totally.
Should we get into some little details we like?
I do have a comparison that I want to shout out. There was another more recent film than Tokyo Godfathers that I kept thinking of throughout, which is, have either of you seen the movie Shoplifters?
No. I wanted to. I never got to it.
Yeah.
It came out a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, it was the Palme d'Or winner at Cannes in 2018.
Okay, yeah. I've seen something else that had a similar title, but no.
Yeah, but it's directed by Hirokazu Koreeda, who's made some other great films as well. But this is another movie that it's a live action film that is set in Japan and depicts really a chosen family they have a dwelling, but of very poor characters. There is, there's a different vibe. There's a different set of themes that guide the arc of the movie. But I kept thinking of that as another very like potent depiction of characters who choose each other and really operate as a family unit. And all of the different kind of like harmonies and tensions that can exist because of that also happens to be set in the same country. So if you want like a very different lens on a similar situation, I would strongly recommend that movie.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a little more like slice of life ensemble drama sort of thing.
Right.
Much more muted by comparison. Not just because the medium is different.
Cool. Well, in the 1 3/4 viewing I saw, there were a couple things that jumped out to me that I thought were really fun.
Them.
Yeah.
Pretty early in the film, when Hana is in line at sort of a food drive or some kind of something like that, and she makes a reference to the woman who's serving her.
Yeah.
She's like, "Fill it up. I'm eating for two."
Yeah.
And then that woman shows up later, coming down an escalator, recognizes her, and she's like, "Wait a minute."
Yeah.
She has
a baby.
I really liked that. I also just love the expression like, "I'm eating for two." I think that's something that gets thrown around sometimes with pregnant women. I just think it's like a lovely catch-all like expression to be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna eat whatever the fuck I want."
Yeah.
So I love that it was there. It was really fun.
Totally. I love how much Miyuki loves cats.
There we go.
When there's kind of this like kitty colony, I think around the time maybe when they find the ruins of
it's around then,
Sachiko's place. And so she has like 10 or 15 cats all around her, and they're all like looking straight into the camera and she's looking straight into the camera and they're all angry. And I actually paused it and like took a photo of that just because I really loved that particular moment.
Nice.
Because as I'll plug later, my Letterboxd is at patronessofcats.
Yeah.
So I was like, Miyuki is a patroness of cats.
There we go.
Yeah.
A kindred spirit of sorts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something that Dougie wanted to point out is like, we see the conditions in which this trio are living in. And then when we see like Sachiko's, I guess, home, we meet her husband.
Right.
And he's like a hoarder. Like, so
Big time.
Dougie was like, he found it so interesting that this guy or like this couple are also kind of like living in like filth and squalor, even though they have a home, they have an apartment.
Yeah. And it doesn't look like it's a rundown apartment complex. It's just within the home.
Yeah.
That actually through me off the first time I saw it too. I was like, whoa, like there are piles in here, man. Yeah. Not a lot of like exposed floor to walk around on. This moment I just really loved. There was a moment where I think it was about around halfway through the film, Hana was in a cab and was kind of trying to like,
she's kind of
butter
hitting
up the cab driver. Love that scene. Very, very funny. But then right after she gets kicked out of the cab for not having the fare, but she and Miyuki are walking, and Miyuki calls her Miss Hana. At least that's the translation that I got. And Hana says, look, you can just call me Uncle Bag, because I guess that's the term that she was given.
That's what Miyuki had used earlier.
Right, exactly. But then Miyuki says later, she's like, but it's kind of long. And I just thought that was a really fun way to show her character's development in some respects. That I do think that it's more than just that. I think that through this journey, I think she's considering Hana as more than just this kind of crass nickname, I love that. I thought that was a really nice touch.
Also, just shout out to that cab driver too, because he comes back big time.
Yeah, that's true.
Totally.
Yeah. I've noticed amongst a number of our conversations that we like to shout out not just the little details, but the so-called little guys in the plot, like the roadie and Spinal Tap, for instance.
Yeah.
But just, these people who don't make a show of themselves, but are really crucial to the way that these movies turn out.
Right. I'm trying to remember Lonesome Road's his guy, Beanie.
Beanie,
yeah, Beanie.
Yeah, Beanie in A Face in the Crowd, and now I wish I remembered his name, but the cab driver from Tokyo Godfathers.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
We see you.
Yeah, totally. I've last few all related to Gen, which is one, he is a bad gambler. He has bad luck, and we know this because he was in immense debt. And so whenever he makes a decision, Hana makes the opposite decision. Like there are
I like that. Show the giant wedge that sits between them.
Exactly.
I love that. That's great.
The next thing is that when they're at the Yakuza boss's daughter's wedding, and they come in with the boss, and Kyoko, the like third Kyoko,
his daughter,
is his daughter, but she turns to the camera, and says, "Daddy, you're late."
I caught this too. To Gin. Yeah.
And so that it looks like she's saying it to Gin, because when it cuts away, we then cut to Gin rather than to her actual father.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that was such a cool choice.
Oh, yeah. I caught that too on my rewatch. That was really good.
Yeah, and I think for a moment watching it, I thought like, oh,
is that Gen's daughter?
Yeah, is that her?
And given when we're going to meet her, yeah.
Well, I mean, that scene is just rife with coincidence, beyond just that. So I would not have put it past Satoshi Kon to just put that in there as well, even if it's more of an Easter egg than like a more consequential plot point.
Yeah. And the last one I wanted to say is like Gen was a cyclist. Now, we don't think he was actually a competitive cyclist, but his daughter says that they owned a bike shop.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like a cyclist, even if it was just like, as a hobby.
Right.
And then he does a lot of cycling and like chasing down the truck.
He does.
He gets to really bring back this skill and maybe live out, like you said earlier, Julian, his like kind of action star dream, his fantasy of being a famous cyclist.
Yeah.
Like he gets on that bike, and
and
chases down that truck.
Awesome.
Totally. Yeah.
On the subject of the action set pieces that happen in this film, of which there are some really fun ones, my heart was in my throat through the whole end of that movie. Every way that this baby almost falls off the top of this building. I mean, literally, there was like 3 or 4 moments where it's like, oh, they disappear. Nope, someone's holding onto a ledge. It was just, it was so Buster Keaton. I loved it. I was so for it.
Which again, in live action is like a little too like, oh no. Like you do feel that in animation, but I do think in live action, it's either Buster Keaton and it's like comedy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Or it's like real like terror.
Right. Yeah. True. Yeah. There's no real good in between.
Yeah. Not just because of what you see on screen, but of the thoughts of like, how on earth did they film that too?
Yeah.
Right. Are there any final thoughts we want to say about Tokyo Godfathers?
I'm very excited to keep going through the rest of the Satoshi Kon filmography. I think this was a really great intro. I think, I've heard that for some people it is like this movie is kind of seen as like a departure from his other works, but to me, like, I don't know why, for whatever reason, I kind of had the sense that this was like the seminal Satoshi Kon film. Maybe I just had heard the most about it before watching it. And, as I see more films, I'll see how accurate that is in my estimation with the rest of them. But I loved it. I had a great time. I think that, I'm still quite taken by the mix of the realities of Tokyo and the very abundant fiction of the film too. I think it's as many different comparisons and not to be confused with, as we have noted already. I think that I really haven't seen another movie like it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Madeline, for the suggestion.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Madeline. I would say that too.
I'm just really glad that I got to bring this movie to you guys and that you guys were open to it and that it seemed like you enjoyed the experience. And I have not seen Millennium Actress yet. That's the one Kon that I'm missing. So I'm very excited to go finally check that off my list. I think that as I said earlier, he dies when he's only 46. So he was such like a trailblazer, I think, in Japanese animation, and he could have done so much more. But I think the fact that he does so much with these 4 films,
Yeah, so few films. Yeah,
it is really incredible and really inspiring. And I think it's really important that we respect them for what they are, because they ultimately become so influential.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, as I've said a number of times already, this is a gigantic, you were talking about a Satoshi Kon sized hole or gap. There's like a whole country's cinema gap that I have to start filling in. Mark my words, in the next 3 or 4 months, I'll get through at least 1, maybe 2 more of these. I'm open to suggestions. I feel like I've heard a bunch of really good ones here so far. I really enjoy this. I will say, too, I just loved talking about this movie. I feel like there's so many avenues in.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking about it being a holiday movie. I know we didn't spend a whole lot of time, I guess, addressing the holiday aspects of it, but there is this sort of light touch that you just feel throughout the whole thing, that nothing is ever too dour, nothing is ever too saccharine.
Yeah, there's like a moment towards the beginning when Hana's getting very angry at the 2 of them, but then it starts snowing.
Right.
And that just like immediately kind of lightens it and like brightens up her face.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like that is a lovely little microcosm of the greater experience watching this movie, that you do feel like you're in really good hands. Like, this movie is never going to get too high or too low. It just kind of finds this really wonderful frequency. I would have not expected to see this movie and think, oh yeah, like really nice, wonderful holiday film. But I see it and I really liked it. And thank you, Madeline, for the suggestion.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
We did it. We talked Tokyo Godfathers. Now, this is the last conversation, listeners, that you will have for us in 2024. This would be a great time, I guess, for us to reflect and consider maybe what of the movies that we've seen this year maybe left the biggest mark.
Yeah, and this is in lieu of an unlikely shared universe because it's a little bit difficult to connect an animated film to other works.
I certainly intended to. I just didn't really have the time to flesh one out. And some of these voice actors have fairly limited careers.
Sure.
So even things that they had done, I may not have seen. So it would be possible. We've connected to animation before in our unlikely shared universe.
Yeah, I think that you're the main one responsible for that too.
I have.
Yeah. Which is very laudable. But yeah, no unlikely shared universe this episode. Sorry, listeners. But yeah, so movies that we've discussed in the past year that have made the biggest impression. So I have a twofold answer to that question. One of those movies was a rewatch. The other was a new watch, a first timer. The rewatch was Dog Day Afternoon.
I was expecting that one.
Yeah. Because I mean, I had seen, really, in all honesty, part of it on television when I was like 15. But this was my watching it for the podcast when we did our John Cazale episode. It was my first time watching it really in earnest since then, and that movie stuck with me so much. I've rewatched it twice since then, just for the heck of it, including once on 35 millimeter at Metrograph. Incredible. But yeah, there's just, I feel like there's so much about humanity captured in the very like specific trappings of that movie, and there's still like a lot I think I have yet to mine through in it as well. So that really stuck with me. But then the first time watch that I want to shout out, that really left, I think, the biggest mark on me is still a movie that I think is pretty fresh in all of our minds. And I have to hand it to you, Emilio, for suggesting this one, A Face in the Crowd. Yeah, I think it was very easy for me to see ever since watching it that this movie like is just such a, like, for all the stories like it's such a central example of, what a character can do when they're given like too much exposure, too much power. And it's just, I think, such a very moving and thought-provoking parable about human nature, and a movie that I think that if you have seen it, it's plainly evident how great it is. So
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the one I keep thinking about. So yeah, thank you for that suggestion, Emilio.
Of course, man. I'm glad you liked it. How about you, Madeline?
Yeah, I mean, I was honestly scrolling through our feed. This was a really big year for us. We
Yeah.
didn't go live this year. We went live in 2023. But I mean, this was our first full year of doing this podcast, which
Right.
is really exciting. So
Yeah.
we watched a lot of movies. One movie that I was the only person new to was Midnight Cowboy.
Yeah.
I know both of you guys had seen that previously, but that was one suggested to me. And that's a movie that I just continue to think about a lot, and I'm really excited to revisit. Obviously, it's a classic. It's beloved for good reason, and I just think it gave me like a new appreciation for Dustin Hoffman in particular, and for Jon Voight, who I had pretty limited experience with. So
Sure.
yeah, I really enjoyed that one. So that's one that I'm just very thankful to have been exposed to from this podcast, and was able to like talk about in such an open way. And then, you know, Emilio, for both you and I, we were able to bring movies that were very, very important to us
Right.
this year. Like, so for me, I got to talk about Grease, which is the movie I've seen the most in my life and had a lot of fun talking about, much like I had a lot of fun talking about Tokyo Godfathers, which is newer in my life. But Grease was just such a fun time, and it was so great to have our friend Jamie Holmes on for that. So yeah, I think Grease and Midnight Cowboy are the two for me.
Sweet. I love that. I love that you guys both had two, because I also had two. So both movies I'm going to bring up are movies that I did not have a whole lot of prior knowledge of, or I was seeing for the first time. Julian, I'm going to go with you first in terms of the person to recommend it. This is a rather new one, but Carol.
Yeah.
I was really blown back by that movie. That is like a slow hanging pitch right over the plate for me. I just loved that movie. I think I'm going to watch it again like over the holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really am. I'm
As this episode is released.
exactly. Yes. Yeah.
We're
I've
recording
told
it beforehand.
yeah, but I told my wife Elizabeth about it, and
She'll love it.
This is one that I was like, we're gonna watch this.
Yeah.
So thank you, Julian, for that. And Madeline, I'm gonna thank you for this. This is not a movie, but when we talked Divine,
Yeah.
the kind of unspoken paired close up that we did there was John Waters.
Yeah.
And I loved getting to learn more about John Waters.
Yeah.
And I think just getting to understand this guy's sense of humor and his outlook on life and the style of movies that he makes, which I don't think I would have like initially been really drawn to, but
Yeah.
but when I kind of consider everything, I find him to be such a vital filmmaker. I'm so sold on his importance, like his place in the pantheon of great filmmakers. And so even though we were discussing Divine, the big takeaway for me was John Waters is just
Yeah.
such an like a unique treasure of a filmmaker and human being. And so those are my two.
Yeah. When we talked Pink Flamingos, I think we may have mentioned that there was going to be like an unofficial sequel to
Yeah.
that film. I have recently acquired the screenplay for More Flamingos.
way.
So
Okay.
I was visiting my brother in San Francisco. His girlfriend owns a bookstore called 34 Trinities. So if you're in San Francisco, go check out 34 Trinity,
Nice.
the world's smallest bookstore.
Okay.
And she had this book there that had 3 screenplays by John Waters. It had Desperate Living, and I forget the third one, but it had the Pink Flamingo sequel.
No way.
Which I
Okay.
haven't read yet, but I'm very excited to read. That's going to be on my list over the holidays.
You got to
And
tell me how that. what
yeah,
that's
once
like.
I finish it, you guys are more than welcome to borrow it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like I remember Anthony,
Yeah.
who was our guest on that episode, talking about just Divine levitating at some point.
Yeah. I talked to Anthony, and he owns this same book. So
cool.
I let him know. Now I own one as well. It's also signed. So it was very exciting find.
All right.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Don't you have a copy of Liar Mouth as well?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, which
Yeah.
I haven't read, but Dougie has.
Yeah,
and
'cause-
really recommends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because John Waters, as of this recording, is, I believe, in production, making Liarmouth his first movie in more than 20 years.
Although when
I've heard something,
yeah, when I saw him he does a birthday show every year at City Winery, and so when I saw that, and he did kind of a Q&A, people asked him, "Where's Liarmouth right now?" And he at that point, which was months ago, was like, at the moment, it's like nothing's moving forward. That like Aubrey wants to do it. I want it to happen, but like no update. It's not actively in production.
Got it.
Yeah,
So,
gotcha.
so that's
Well,
a shame.
hopefully it does
Hopefully
happen.
it does. Yeah, hopefully it does.
Yeah.
I also just want to say just a massive thanks to the two of you guys.
Thank you.
Hey,
No,
you too.
seriously, because I do feel like in some ways this year has been so much more rich because we've had
Absolutely.
an opportunity to do this. And I can't speak for everybody, but for me, it's just been this like incredible joy. I feel like
Yeah.
I've been able to almost sort of like relive an old version of myself by doing this. And I know this has been a real labor of love for the three of us.
Totally.
And so I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys for being on board with this and keeping this going. So thank you guys. This has
Yeah.
been really fun.
Right back at you.
Yeah, thank both of you. I mean, Emilio, you do so much for this podcast. I mean, listeners are not in here with us, but you set up our sound equipment. You're our unofficial producer while we're recording. So we appreciate all the extra work you do.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
It has been a real pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah. Share it all
and
around.
thank you, listeners, for
Yeah.
checking
Yes.
us out throughout this year.
Should we say a bit about what we're doing next?
We absolutely should.
Yes.
Thank
so,
you, Julian.
yes. So, as the year changes, we are also entering a new cycle of episodes. Apropos of award season, to follow our theme last year of unique Best Picture winners, we're going to do a cycle now devoted to some great entries in the supporting actor and actress categories. So we're going to watch a bunch of movies that feature people who have won either Best Supporting Actress or Actor across the years. There will be a nice spread of genres and different types of characters.
Yeah, we haven't totally settled on what we're going to call this cycle yet, but
Yeah.
that's what we're
the
going to do.
conceit.
That's the
Yes.
conceit. Yes, absolutely.
And we'll begin that for our unanimous entry, the movie that we've all seen before. So the supporting acting categories are a great place to honor antagonists, villains.
Yeah,
And we
definitely.
will start by looking at a film that features an antagonist who, for us as musicians, hits especially hard.
Yes.
Maybe
I
you've
would say
already
so.
put the pieces together, but that role would belong to J.K. Simmons in Damien Chazelle's film Whiplash.
Yes, Terrence Fletcher
Yes.
is his name. And if you've seen that movie, you'll never forget him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so excited
Yeah.
to talk about this movie.
Me too.
I am chomping at the bit.
I'm really excited to rewatch this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And we all studied music in college, and so I think that we'll have a very, specific experience and perspective to bring to this.
Yeah,
Yeah, very
and
excited.
I've had some very thorough thoughts about this movie that both have to do with the musical and non-musical aspects for many, many years since it was out in theaters. I'm very much looking forward to discussing it with you guys when the time comes.
Awesome. Same goes.
In addition to this podcast, you can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can contact us via email. Let me know if you want to borrow my DVDs.
Only
We'd love
the
to
weird
hear
ones.
from you. Write to us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. If you're on Letterboxd, you can follow me, not Miyuki, at patronessofcats.
And you can follow me, Julian, also not Miyuki, at Julian_Barthold. It's just my name. And if you are listening to us for the first time, thank you for finding us. If this is the second or third or 30th time you've listened to us, thank you for sticking with us. We have really grown to love doing this, and it means the world to have our budding listenership grow.
And if you haven't already, we'd ask you, return listener, to please write a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. This is one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and help our podcast take its next steps. You can also keep it grassroots, and you can tell a friend to tell a friend about the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. That helps too.
Well, happy holidays. Happy
Yes.
New Year. Thank you again for checking us out.
Yes, said it all right there. Be well in 2025. You'll hear from us again then.